Ever get that feeling like something so off the wall kind of circles back to brilliant? Like finding a crumpled 20 in the pocket of an old jacket? Well, today we're taking that feeling and cranking it up to 11.
11.
Yeah, 11. We're diving into some excerpts from Eingefugter text by this guy, Stefan. It's poetry, creative writing advice. Honestly, it's hard to say, but buckle up because this is going to be a wild ride.
I'll say, I went in expecting, I don't know, some high-minded literary theory. Instead, I got hit with a tidal wave of, well, let's just call it unconventional wisdom.
Unconventional is putting it mildly. This is like if Salvador Dali decided to write a self-help book after a 3-day bender. But hold on, because even in all the exuberance, there are some seriously intriguing nuggets of writing advice.
That's what we're here to unearth for you. We're going to sift through the chaos, translate the ramblings, and see if we can pull out some practical tools you can use to make your own writing more vibrant, more engaging, and maybe just a little bit dangerous.
Right. We're talking about ditching cliches, embracing those raw, unfiltered ideas, and maybe even weaponizing a bit of color along the way.
Weaponizing color.
Oh yeah, he goes there. But we'll get to that. First, let's talk about what Stefan calls the spoon moment. It's based on this story about Salvador Dali, the surrealist painter with the interesting mustache.
You hard to miss that mustache.
Right. So Dali would supposedly take naps with a spoon dangling over a plate. When the spoon slipped and clanged against the plate, the sudden noise would jolt him awake and bam, creative inspiration.
So basically he's saying to chase those sudden jolts of inspiration.
It's even more than that. He calls it functional insanity. Like there's a method to the madness. Don't just wait for the spoon to fall. Actively seek out those moments where your brain goes a little sideways.
I see. So it's not about literally napping with silverware. It's about training yourself to be receptive to those unconventional, out-of-the-box ideas that might seem weird at first, but could actually lead to something brilliant.
Exactly. Like, instead of shutting down those weird random thoughts, you got to lean into them. Like that time I tried putting pickles on my ice cream. Okay, bad example.
Maybe stick to writing.
Right, point taken. But the point is, those offbeat ideas, the ones that make you go, huh, those might be the seeds of something truly unique. So how do we actually make those spoon moments happen?
I think it's about creating an environment where those unconventional thoughts can bubble up. Maybe that's free writing without judgment, trying to come up with the worst ideas imaginable, because sometimes the worst can lead to the best, or even just paying attention to those random connections your brain makes when you're doing something totally unrelated to writing.
So kind of like giving your brain permission to play, to wander off the beaten path a little.
Exactly. It's about breaking free from those rigid thought patterns and letting yourself explore the fringes, even if it feels a little uncomfortable at first. Now, speaking of uncomfortable, let's talk about Stefan's color technique.
Oh boy, here we go. This is where he really goes full-on mad scientist.
Mad artist, maybe?
Well, he doesn't just suggest using color in your writing. He practically screams, not as an adjective, but as a weapon.
A weapon? That seems a bit dramatic, even for him.
Oh, trust me, it gets more dramatic. He talks about driving a fist through the reader's chest and hitting their dusty empathy center. Subtlety is not his strong suit, but there's actually a pretty powerful idea buried under all the bravado.
Lay it on me.
He's basically saying, pick one dominant color and use it as a recurring metaphor throughout your piece. Not just as a description, but as a symbol, an emotional anchor that runs through the whole thing. He gives some vivid examples. Pink for infidelity, black for grief, green for jealousy, white for, well, let's just say sudden, jarring realizations.
Okay, I see where the weapon part comes in. It's about using color to evoke really strong emotions, almost like you're hitting the reader over the head with them.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, it's not that different from how a filmmaker uses color palettes to set a mood, right? It's just that Stefan takes it to a whole other level.
So instead of saying she was sad, you might describe the faded blue of her dress, the way the streetlights cast a bluish tinge on the wet pavement, her blue eyes reflecting a dull, empty sky.
Exactly. It's not just decoration. It's about using color to create a specific feeling, a tangible atmosphere that the reader can almost touch. And the key, like you said, is to connect the color with concrete imagery.
Right. The color itself is just the starting point. It's the details, the specific things you describe with that color that give it its real power. Like that blue dress example. It works because it's not just blue. It's faded, it's worn, it's reflecting a cold, empty world. Those details give the color its emotional weight.
So how do you choose the right color? Do you just go with your gut, or is there a more calculated approach?
Well, there are definitely some cultural and emotional associations with different colors that you can play with. Like pink, for example, is often associated with romance, but stiffen uses it to represent infidelity, which is a pretty powerful twist. Black is often associated with mourning, green with jealousy, and white can represent purity, but also emptiness. It's about understanding those existing connections and then using them in a way that serves your story.
So it's not just about picking your favorite color. It's about choosing a color that carries the right emotional baggage for what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
And then, like you said before, you got to commit to it, weave it throughout your piece in a way that feels intentional and meaningful.
Right. But he does caution against overdoing it. There's a fine line between using color effectively and having it come across as, well, a bit much.
Oh, yeah, he has this fantastically understated warning. If you overdo it, even the paramedics are like, whoa, dial it back on the color there, buddy.
Yeah.
But even in his over-the-top way, he's making an important point. This technique, like any powerful tool, needs to be used with care and precision.
It goes back to that idea of functional insanity. It's not about being crazy for the sake of being crazy. It's about using unconventional methods in a deliberate way to achieve a specific effect.
Okay, so we've got the spoon moment where we're encouraged to embrace those weird, disruptive ideas, and the color technique where we're basically weaponizing a single color to drive the emotional core of our writing. What's the big takeaway here? What's Stefan trying to tell us about creating work that truly connects, that really resonates with people?
I think at its heart, it's about being fearless in your originality and embracing raw, honest emotion. He's saying, don't be afraid to be weird, don't shy away from those intense feelings, and don't be afraid to experiment with unconventional methods to bring them to life.
It's about finding that unique voice, that perspective that cuts through all the noise and makes people sit up and take notice. And maybe, just maybe, the spoon moment and the color technique are just two sides of the same coin. They're both about pushing you outside your comfort zone, forcing you to think differently and feel more deeply. And in that space, in that discomfort, you might just discover something truly special.
I like that. So for our listeners, what's a color that immediately evokes a strong feeling for you? What specific images come to mind? How could you weave that color and those images into something you're working on? And what's a spoon moment idea that you've been brushing aside, thinking it was too weird or too out there? What if that idea, that little spark of insanity, is actually the key to unlocking something truly remarkable?
Now, if all this talk about creative anarchy has got you fired up, Stefan's got a little something for you. He mentions a book, Poetry Master Poesy Craft in 7 Tagen. It's in German, but don't worry, there's an English version too for all you English-speaking rebels out there. So if you're feeling brave and maybe a little bit crazy, dive in and see what kind of poetic chaos you can cook up.
Sounds like a good recipe for those who are resonating with Stefan's unique and, let's be honest, slightly unhinged approach to writing.
All right, folks, that's our deep dive for today. Go forth. Embrace your inner weirdo. And remember, even bad ideas can sometimes lead to brilliant results. Until next time, stay creative. That creative, Stefan.